stretch far enough. That's where QuickQuid, the online payday lender, could help. It could help.
Born in the 90s, living in the UK has not been easy. We've witnessed the 2008 financial crisis, Brexit, COVID, and now the 2022 inflationary event, which has yet to run its course. Even now, as a corporate professional, it takes a lot of self-control and knowledge to navigate the current financial landscape. That being said, complaining does not pay bills. There is always a way to make the best of a bad situation. Here are some of the things I am doing and have done to make sure I can keep my head above water, which these days seems like an achievement in itself. Number 5. Increasing your income. There's a reason this tip is number 5. This is a high effort activity, and in many cases the returns are not as great as you'd expect. It's difficult to implement in industries where you're not paid by the hour. For example, if you're an Uber driver or a plumber, fair enough, you can work more hours, but the majority of people in the UK are salaried, and for these people, increasing income requires getting a new job, which might not always be easy. Further ways of increasing income are things such as side hustles, which have their issues, because anything you earn over £1,000 is taxed. And if you're a higher income earner, somebody over £50,000 or even worse, somebody over £100,000, you're not going to be seeing a lot of that money. So once you reach a certain threshold of salaried income, this becomes less and less lucrative, especially if the side hustle, it takes up a lot of your time. Now I will say, if you do set up a very successful business selling items such as drop shipping or something to that effect, and you're making huge amounts of revenue, tax doesn't really matter, you're making enough money to make up for it. However, the realistic truth is most people will not end up in this sort of a situation. Similarly to me, the closest I got to this situation was when I was a teacher. I did some tutoring on the side and it really helped. I got £20 an hour and I worked 50 hours throughout the year to receive my tax-free allowance, which was an extra bonus. However, did it change my life? No, but it did help. Number 4, have an emergency fund. Now this is number 4 because ideally you'd want to have done this before the cost of living crisis, but I'm going to tell you it anyway because it's something I've kind of done and it's helped a little bit, and it will help anyone who doesn't want to be in a situation where they're in trouble. Personally, I started using a method where I remove 10% of my take-home pay and keep it in reserve. This means within 10 months I can be an entire pay cycle ahead. Okay, to put that into context, after 2 years of doing this, I can be close to 2.5 pay cycles ahead, which means, for example, God forbid, I lose my job, I can have 2 months saved up just in case to give me time to find a new one. Realistically, if you are going to lose your job, it's not going to be instant. You're going to get a month's notice or 3 months notice if you're very senior, or you're going to get a couple of weeks here and there. So you'll have a bit of time, but then you can add the money you already have to that time. So you're basically just buying yourself a get out of jail free card. It's very important to have this because it improves your well-being as well, in the sense that you're less stressed. And after you have this emergency fund built up, realistically 6 months is the most you'll need. You can start spending a bit more on luxury. Number 3, avoid debt. We all know debt is bad. Well, usually there are good debts and there are bad debts, but the type of debts you get into because of cost of living are usually bad debts. If you can help it, stay clear of debt, even interest-free debt, unless you have a reason for using it. Personally, I have a Monzo Flex account, which is a form of interest-free debt that allows me to pay for purchases on that card in 3 installments. I use this to help cash flow, as currently I'm trying to save for a house deposit and I have that money saved up, but I just want to beef it up as much as I can. So I used it to kind of spread out the costs. However, my rule for stuff like this is always have enough money in your bank account to pay it all off in one go. Because if you don't, you probably shouldn't be taking out the debt. There are other situations where you can get into debt as well. For example, if you pay for car insurance in the UK for anybody under the age of about 100 is very expensive. So if you take out car insurance, try and pay it as a lump sum. Usually you'll save about 10 to 20% rather than paying it in installments. This is even more important as the base rate is increasing, meaning that any debt you do take out will be charged at a higher interest rate if it's tied to the base rate. So be careful and stay away from debt. Finally, payday loan.
You know, it doesn't matter how careful you are with money. Sometimes your pay just won't stretch far enough. That's where QuickQuid, the online payday lender, could help.
And I would have made millions if it hadn't been for you meddling kids.
Number 2, live below your means. There is a saying in the English language, a fool and his money are soon parted. This saying is very important to think about on a daily basis. Our world is designed to make us spend money we don't need to. Billboards, advert, plugins, everything's trying to make you spend money. So think about that. I'm not saying don't buy anything, but what I am saying is whatever you do buy, have a rhyme and reason for it. Don't just spend money unnecessarily. For example, I consider myself a frugal person, and recently I've noticed that I've been spending a lot of money in supermarkets, just having a walk there, looking around, buying things. I live next to an Aldi, which if you're from the UK you know is one of the most cheapest supermarkets you can go to. However, I go to Aldi a lot, maybe 3 or 4 times a week, and unfortunately every time I go I spend about £10 in random £1 purchases. Some of these I do need, but I'd say about half of them at least are products I should not be buying. That means I spend about £15 a week on things I shouldn't really be buying. £15 a week is about £60 a month, and £60 a month can be about £500 a year. That is a lot of money spent on things I don't need. And what's more scary is when you think about that £500 as a percentage of take-home pay, you're looking at a significant percentage of your yearly salary on just things you probably shouldn't be buying in the first place. Just because you feel like buying something doesn't mean you should buy it. So avoid buying things you don't need. Another area which I am guilty of, hot UK deals or other gift and voucher websites. Whenever you go on these sites, you feel like you're getting a good deal. If you get a laptop that you don't need at 50% off and the retail value is £500 and you pay £250, you feel like you've got a good deal. Unfortunately, what you've actually done is wasted £250 because essentially you did not need the product and you might have had an old laptop that worked perfectly. So really think about this. I feel the single best way to combat this sort of unnecessary spending is no spend days. No spend days are important ways of getting yourself out of this mindset of spending money unnecessarily. Do bulk shopping once or twice a week or a month or whenever you feel like, and don't shop outside of these times. Don't even spend any money. And if you are spending money, have a reason for it. Number 1, budgeting. When I talk about budgeting, people will probably cringe and wince and think about the pain they're going to have, the sacrifice they're going to make. But personally, what I've benefited from doing is reframing budgeting as rather than something that restricts what you can do, as something that enables what you will be able to do in the future. For example, personally, I have some short-term and long-term economic goals. My number 1 priority since I've been a 20-year-old has been to buy a house, and it's always seemed out of reach. However, I've made sure to do the things I can do to work towards that goal. As circumstances change, you may in the future do a course that allows you to get a better job and therefore have a better income. However, if you haven't been saving up in the last 10 years, you might not have the deposit to put down to get that house you can now technically afford. So having short-term and long-term economic goals is the foundation and the bedrock of a solid budgeting plan. Personally, some good goals that I've lived by are maxing out my lifetime ISA on a yearly basis. That means £4,000 every year saved up into my lifetime ISA. This has a double effect of not only allowing me to have some cash saved up, so no matter how little I save on a month-to-month basis, throughout the year I have £4,000 saved. It also allows me to restrict my ability to pull from that cash amount, as now it's in a lifetime ISA and I can't touch it. It's important to be positive about this process and thinking about it as something that is helping you rather than restricting yourself. If you look at budgeting as some sort of self-hatred act and you're making your life worse and living in a difficult situation, then it will become that. Ultimately, it is what you make of it. If you think spending a set amount on food every week is making your life significantly worse, then yeah, it's going to upset you. However, if you think that, oh, let me challenge myself, how little can I spend this month and still be happy, then you'll reframe your mindset and improve your process. And long term, building wealth is about saving and accruing the money that you do make and preventing it from leaving your hands. Spending money is easy, saving it is difficult. So budgeting and thinking about what you do is perhaps the most important aspect of this. Finally, just a way to think about it. In the corporate world, there's things such as performance reviews, and even in very menial jobs, a lot of times on a yearly basis, your performance will be reviewed. Have you ever sat down and considered your yearly performance reviews around your own financial health, well-being? is it ever dawned on anyone to pull out their bank statements for the entire year and look at where they could have possibly saved, where they could have made efficiencies? If you're spending £300 a month on takeaways and deliveries, is that really an appropriate use of your funds, especially when your take home is less than £2,000 per month? It probably isn't. So really think long and hard about where your money's going, about where you can make savings, and most importantly, look at it as a positive process that enables you to do the things you want to, rather than restricting yourself. Personally, I'd rather live off beans and ramen if it means that in 10 years time, or in 5 years time, or even in 2 years time, I can drive the car I want to drive, I can live in the house I want to live in, and I can live the life I want. And then after that, fair enough, once you have those big long-term goals sorted, live a little, go out, eat, but do it in moderation and do it in a way that's sustainable.